Right up there in popularity with Fox's 38 is RockShox Zeb fork. Zeb was designed to take the abuse of the most demanding terrain by maximizing torsional stiffness and small bump sensitivity for a balanced ride experience. We tested the latest Zeb Ultimate, and while it might not look that much different than before, there is more going on than just a shiny new red colorway. Most notably a new damper and bushings that have a significant impact on performance and tuning. The Zeb is the first 38mm stanchion fork from RockShox and is reminiscent of the Totem model from years past, but with a whole lot more bump-eating tech packed inside. The upper portion of the chassis features a tapered steer tube butted into a machined crown that shaves as much weight as possible and gives the Zeb a premium look without sacrificing stiffness. The lower legs represent all that RockShox has learned over the past decade of development in enduro racing and long-travel single-crown performance. Pressure relief valves are found on the backside of the lower legs, and a dial-style plug is used to operate them. Above those sit a set of SKF dust wiper seals to minimize friction. Around the axle are torque cap compatible dropouts for oversized hub end caps to maximize stiffness at the hub interface. There are also bolt-in placeholders included for use with regular hubs. Other lower leg details include a 200mm post-mount brake interface, a Maxell 15mm through axle, and an offset arch to help clear larger head tubes as well as bolt-on fender mounts. RockShox is always chasing friction reduction and small bump sensitivity, most of which can be attributed to the Debonair Plus air spring found inside the Zeb. The piston runs along the inner wall of the upper tube, and RockShox utilizes a more rigid construction of the internal air spring components to maintain smooth action regardless of forces transmitted through the external chassis. This helps avoid friction normally associated with this style of air spring. A larger air volume helps build support naturally throughout travel, and volume can be adjusted through the use of the bottomless tokens provided with the fork. Taking small bump absorption even further, two rubber pucks found at the bottom of the air shaft and damper assemblies, referred to as buttercups, soak up trail chatter before the air spring even begins to move. The newly released Charger 3.1 damper is now found across Ultimate and Select Plus level forks within the RockShox lineup. This revision creates a larger range of damping force within the same range of adjustment. The compression circuit has been reworked to help oil flow more freely when open for decreased damping support and to be more restrictive when closed for increased damping support, meaning each click will result in a greater damping effect than before. While the 3.1 update is quite new, the best attributes of the original Charger 3 still remain. There are still 5 clicks of high-speed compression, 10 clicks of low-speed compression, and 20 clicks of rebound adjustment with the same intuitive user interface to coincide with the rest of RockShox forks and shocks. These adjustments are designed to eliminate any crossover from one to the next, meaning one damping effect should have no effect on another to allow for the most precise setup possible. The final update to the newest generation of Zeb chassis is the switch to a set of low-friction bushings in the lower legs that are said to help capture oil better and provide more consistent lubrication. The Zeb Ultimate is available for 27.5 and 29-inch wheels with corresponding 38 or 44mm offset. Our 29-inch 170mm test fork weighed in at 2,389 grams, making it the second lightest fork in the test and retailed for $1,160, landing it right in the middle of the group for price. While some of us had ridden the Zeb more in the past than others, none of us had yet to spend any time on the latest Charger 3.1 damper. But as we got into testing, these changes proved to be highly effective and the results spoke for themselves. It's red. It means it's fast. RockShox Zeb, another big player in the Enduro fork category. Personally, I think this fork looks great. I think it's the best looking fork out of the group. I think that should be something people consider when they're looking at buying an aftermarket fork. Things that stand out about the Zeb is definitely comfort. This was the most comfortable fork out of the group by a little bit of a margin, I thought. That comfort was all across the board. High frequency chatter bumps, braking bumps on bike park trails, getting into all the rocks and all the chunder sections. Like, you don't feel hardly any of the feedback through your hands and your arms, and it's really impressive what they've been able to create with just the damper, the air spring, the chassis, like the whole fork itself.
This is a fork I've ridden a lot in the last few years and had to set up a little bit differently for the conditions here. Yeah, with the changes they've made to the high-speed compression circuit, going to a slightly more open setup than what I would run at home, definitely noticed the changes they made. It seemed to perform a lot better in those successive hits, and for me, this fork was kind of a standout in the group for performance over successive hits.
Similar to the Fox 38 and the Olin's RXF 38, the composure and stability and being planted those are like the key words of all these three forks. And the Zeb was right up there with those two forks to me. Like, I would have a really hard time picking personally which out of the three does any of those better.
For one, it's dead silent, which is, always great to have a quiet bike. And at the same time, it just never seemed to skip a beat. It was the most comfortable fork in the test, I think, overall. And it felt the most controlled in really high-speed situations. That was a lot to do with the air spring sensitivity, the flow of oil in the damper, the buttercups in the lower leg. These things all add up to make it a really calm experience to ride at a high speed.
I really enjoy how they do their compression adjustments and how it's so easy to visually see the changes you're making. And now you don't have maybe as many clicks as some of the other forks, which I think is a good thing. Every click makes a difference. It's so efficient to get to a setup that you're looking for. And it's also really easy to bracket when you're getting the fork and go to one end and see what that feels like and go to the other end. And there's not all this space in between to kind of question if one click's better than the other.
In the gnarlier terrain, like hitting bigger compressions, it stays really composed and you can kind of find either end of the spectrum. There was a few runs where I had it a little too stiff with the settings I would run, back home in Northern California, and it didn't really work here, but having the option to open it up on trail so easily and not have to count how many clicks you are from closed or open. I think the standout characteristic was just comfort across all the terrain types that we tested. It was awesome on the small chatter, and it was equally as impressive in the really heavy compressions on the rockier trails.
Overall, I think it was an amazing fork. It's stiff, it's agile, super poppy, playful, but yet it's there for you when you get in trouble.
With how calm this fork is, it allowed me to go into those gnarlier sections, and when you're feeling less of the bumps, you're able to focus a bit more on what's coming at you. The same as like riding a quiet bike. When there's just less outside commotion happening, it was easier to ride my bike and just know that the fork was going to be there doing what it was doing. Comfort scored the highest out of that. I would say that traction was one of the best out of the group. Tunability scored very well because it's so easy to just visually see the adjustments you're making. And for all those reasons, like, the Zeb was the highest scoring fork for me in the test. The only reason I didn't pick this as the fork that I would like to take home from this group test was that comfort and that soak up every little compression and the buttercups doing their thing with high frequency bumps made it feel a little vague sometimes with what was happening with my front end and my front wheel. That vagueness it didn't take away from the ride quality, but maybe I'm somebody who has grown up with forks that tell you a little bit more of what's going on, and that is like the ride quality I'm after. This almost muted so much of the trail that sometimes I was looking to know more of what was happening. It's definitely more of a personal thing. I think that this fork with the tuning you have on offer would be epic for racing if you were going that route, or if you're coming to Mountain Creek like we've done the last week, and you're riding like really rough, chattery stuff during summer. Perfect for that. Like, your hands are going to be nice and comfy, not a lot of arm pump. RockShox Zeb.